So while I'm talking, you can also read the poll. And the poll includes 4 definitions of the blue economy. And so we're asking you to select the best one.
Everybody can see the poll? Thumbs up.
And while you're looking at that, I'll give you a little introduction to OceanExchange. So we are a 501c3, so in US speak, that's a nonprofit, and we're celebrating our 10th year. And I've told some folks that in our first 5 years, it felt like we were pushing on a string a little bit, if you know that saying, that maybe we were a little bit ahead of the wave. No pun there, really intended, about the interest in the ocean. But we were really one of the first ones in what we do that had ocean focus. So our mission is to help advance the adoption of innovative solutions from startups that support broadly sustainability, but we focus on healthy and resilient oceans and coastal systems. So we don't separate the ocean from the connecting coast, because so many people live there and there's so much impact on the people, and the people have impact as well. And we also have a good bit of focus on the greening of supply chains, especially ocean shipping. And that relates to one of our large sponsors. You see our sponsors there when the poll goes down, and you'll see them again at the end. We are privately funded, and always have been. So it's a real testimony to these corporations and to these. There's some family office of philanthropic arms of family offices. And we have a partnership with the Marine Research Hub of South Florida, which includes, well, you'll hear about it later, but includes 4 universities in South Florida. So in order to accomplish that mission, we give away free money, non-dilutive money for you people that went to MBA school. So we don't take equity. We have 2 $100,000 awards that go to startups. And we have a real sweet spot in technology readiness level, TRL, sort of 6 through 9. So we ask that the parties that apply for these awards and go through the competitions have at least a working prototype. And we try to put some real common sense into what that means, because a prototype, let's say, of an AUV is pretty intuitive what a prototype is. If you have a new chemical process to make some new material that's a plastic substitute, you know, what is a real prototype? So we put some common sense into all of that. The whole notion, though, is that we want to take some of the risk out. We're not rewarding just the ideas. We want the idea to have been, you know, quite developed. But not at the commercial stage yet. So our funding is quite important at the stage of these startups who are living on grants, living on friends and family money, you know, couch surfing with friends, you know. I've heard all the stories of the startups, and so our fund's very significant there. We also have a $10,000 collegiate award that is for active undergraduate and graduate students. We're a little more relaxed. We don't say it has to have a working prototype, and we've had that award for 5 years. But the competition has been so competitive that really all the finalists have had working prototypes. Those students that have come in merely with just an idea or even a rough design of whatever they're working on just have not been advanced enough for that. So if we probably shouldn't leave the poll up too much longer, why don't we take it down, and I'll give everyone 30 more seconds and do your voting, and then we'll move on. So here are some of our sponsors, but if you can advance to the next slide.
Oh, sure thing.
Oh, that's just who I am. I spent 30 years in the chemical and materials industry, and then really as a second career, I shifted over. I was the CEO of a startup at University of Texas, El Paso, and it was in material science, and that's really chemical and materials is where I really spent my industrial career. And then I met the founders of OceanExchange and sort of shifted over to what I do now. if you can move on. Next slide.
Working on it. There we go.
So what is the
Are
blue
you want me to show the
economy?
results for the poll?
Yeah, we can do it now. Sure.
There you go.
I think it'd be a good time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, although no clear winner, look at that. And then 3 of them tied for second place. Well, the point here is that all of these are right. And I'll tell you, the first one is from the UN. That's their definition. The second one is the European Union. The third one is the World Wildlife Fund. And the fourth one is the Center for the Blue Economy, which is part of the Middlebury Institute out at Monterey. Although I looked at another site and it was even different from that. So I don't know if this is a more recent one or if they've even changed it. I think the point I'm trying to make is that there isn't one definition. Even with sustainability today, and we've used that term for 12 or 15 years, there isn't one definition that everyone can write on their hand and quote. And the blue economy is sort of far from that. It is evolving, and that's what I'm going to talk about with my slides, and I hope we engage in some conversation about that. If you can close that poll, then we'll, yeah. So this is a Noaa definition of marine activity, and then this will lead into what they do with the blue economy. But you can see Noaa is very broad in how it thinks about marine activity. And then they have economists. Everyone doesn't know that, but Noaa has economists, and they actually track data for the blue economy. And if you can go to the next slide, this is the one that I particularly like and think is so interesting. And they call it the marine economy, but you know, people call it blue economy, they call it ocean economy. We haven't even really settled on that. I have shared this with a good number of people, and some people have still have a very narrow view of what the blue economy is, and it has largely been an old view of things that are extracted from the ocean. So that old-fashioned view tended to be, you know, oil and gas and fisheries, you know, taking things out of the ocean. Now, though, we're starting to think about it in what I think is a good way. And I like these 10 categories, but you could have your own 10, or you could have 7, or you could have 12. I think that's not necessarily the point. And we can talk about any of these that you'd like, but I think it's interesting how the definition is expanding. And you look at one in particular, look at research and education. I'm going to say that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, no one would have thought research and education was part of the blue economy. But Daniel, you're sitting there at University of Miami or close to it. Think about the research that they do. They have vessels. Someone makes those vessels. The university either owns them, or they lease them, or they're granted use of them in some way. Those vessels are outfitted for use with equipment and all sorts of stuff. People go on the vessels and do work. I mean, there's some significant, important economic contribution that comes out of the University of Miami because of their research in the marine area. So I often find that's an interesting example. Why don't you go to the next slide? And then we can come back to these slides with some questions and conversation. I'm just trying to set the table here. This is a recent slide that The Economist borrowed. I found it from them, but you see where it came from. And this one is interesting because there are economists, I don't mean the Economist magazine, but economists by trade, and others who believe that the areas in the blue economy have an opportunity to grow in a faster rate than some traditional and other elements of the economy. And therefore, we should be focused on some of these. Now, this is one one person or one group's view of 5 that should be a priority. And again, we can debate any of these 5, but I think the more interesting point is the focus on the blue economy as being a source of good jobs, good paying jobs, fulfilling jobs, jobs and activities that make life better in those communities, that make either the air better or overall any element of quality of life better. So I find these also particularly interesting. So I will pause here, and here you can go to the next one, and there's some of our contact information. We have a monthly newsletter. I would love for all of you to sign up for that. We will open our call for solutions. That's the process that leads to this awards granting in early 2021. We have a physical event at OceanExchange, and it had been in Savannah, Georgia for 8 years. And then we moved that event to Fort Lauderdale in 2019. We're not having a physical event this year. We're not doing that award granting. We have our own series of webcasts. You see here, there's a library. We just had one yesterday about cellular aquaculture. And if you like the bioscience part of the marine economy, if you're interested in how we're going to feed the world, go to that library. You'll see the company is Blue Nalu. They are San Diego based. But we've had, I think that was 6 in our series, and we will have at least one a month going on, I think, through the end of 2021. We'll continue these webcasts. So I will pause, and Daniel, do you want to take questions, or you want to move over to Kelly and then do all the questions at once? How would you like to do it?
We can pause for questions. In fact, I was going to open it up a little bit just to kind of help continue prefacing here. In the chat, or feel free to raise your hand if you have your camera on. Just curious, is the concept of the blue economy itself new to anyone here? Feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand. But I think there's this important thing that you touched on, Millie, as far as just making people aware that this is even a path, right? And a growing path at that. And so we want to make sure that people both in the space and even out of the space are becoming aware of it and seeing it as this awesome opportunity. And OceanExchange is absolutely facilitating solutions toward that.
Well, I love this one comment. It makes sense. I just didn't know it had a name. We're humans. We tend to we need to communicate. And so we put, we want a tag on it. And I think of all the choices, the term blue economy is the one that's sort of rising up and is getting the greater use.
Absolutely. So anyone have any questions for Millie they want to ask before we move on? Yeah, go for it, Hannah. You can unmute.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm coming at this from a regenerative investor standpoint, and I was just curious what you've seen on the forefront of projects that are really looking to help restore the ocean, and if there's any new and exciting things that you've seen lately.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, I'll refer back to our webcast. We have one group, they're Bahamian, that won $100,000 from us, Coral Vita, and they are doing land coral farming. So I think all these things about coral and, preserving, restoring, having it grow, I think has taken on a lot of importance and interest. And Sam Teicher is the CEO there, and he did a good job. He does a good job anytime he speaks, but he really talked about all the economic benefit of coral. And in that particular webcast, we had someone from The Economist magazine, and they've done studies of the business impact of corals because they are nurseries for fish and, of course, ecotourism. And so our coral reefs have a big economic impact. Other things about generally about fisheries and getting our fisheries more healthy. I would put that in the restorative, area for sure. Cleaning up the ocean from marine debris. we see fewer and fewer solutions that are about directly cleaning up the ocean, because the technology so far really has failed to do that, to be blunt. What we have seen in 10 years is a shift to more material science solutions, so to solve the more basic problems about the material. And we have seen solutions about better waste management, so that you avoid having the debris get into the ocean to begin with. You know, God bless all these people that are working on these solutions to literally clean up and restore the ocean from the debris. But it is a huge challenge, and just the science of it and the physics of some of the devices just hasn't been working.
And, you know, I'm appreciative Hannah brought up the regenerative part of the blue economy. That's something we're going to dive into deeper next week, so I won't go too many spoilers on that. But, you know, it's really, you know, as Millie touched on, this opportunity to both, you know, help rebuild the environment and make money doing it, because there is real value in, you know, what corals can do for the economy, getting plastics out of the supply chain can do. I don't want to steal too much of Jonathan's thunder for next week, but
another one about CO2. One of our winners has a solution not to actually capture it, because one can capture the CO2. It's in what you do with it, and so they're converting that CO2 into fuels or other materials. So it's sort of a circular bit. That company is Opus 12. They came out of Stanford University, and then they went into Cyclotron Road, which is a very prestigious incubator that's out there near Berkeley Labs. So that's another area where we see a lot of excitement and a lot of activity.
That's really cool. We have time for maybe one more question before we're going to jump to Kelly. Anyone else want to ask a question?
Yes, I would.
Oh, hello.
Hi again.
I talked to Rodrigo yesterday. Go ahead.
Yes, good to see you again. I was wondering if that seasteading project would be considered part of the blue economy, or what's your opinion about it also?
I'm sorry, what project?
The seasteading.
Where people
project.
live?
Yes.
Where they? Oh, absolutely. I think to use the ocean as an area. Well, actually, we saw to live is interesting. So years ago, I want to say 8 years ago, we saw a solution, and it was out off of the Bay Area, so out in the water, and they had taken, I don't know if it was an old cruise ship, I can't remember now, and people were going to live on it and commute into San Francisco to work every day. And I think part of it was about work visas. I mean, there were all these things around it, but it was also going to be a lot cheaper. And it was a time when living in San Francisco was particularly expensive. I think now, you know, rents have come down and things are very different in San Francisco. But I would say yes. It would. But this brings up an important point. So some people say the blue economy are only those things that are sort of green or sustainable or don't hurt the ocean while you're doing it. And some say the blue economy is everything, even those things that might potentially have some impact on the ocean. So this whole thing about seasteading and the people living there, I think there would be a lot of people on this call and a lot of people anywhere who would say it's a good thing to do as long as it can be done without having some big footprint. So how the waste is disposed and how people are transported back and forth would have to, you know, be in some sustainable way. But that is one of the debates about the blue economy, that impact piece of it.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we will have time for more questions later. I'm just trying to make sure we have enough time for all the different things we want to cover today. Now I'm going to jump to Kelly. So Kelly, you want to maybe introduce a little bit about the Marine Research Hub before I start on some of the questions I prepared for you?
Sure. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me. Yes. Okay, good. So the Marine Research Hub was started about 4 years ago, and sort of built on the idea of the research triangle, which started out as a memorandum of understanding to share library resources between the universities. So we put together a memorandum of understanding, and we went to our 4 South Florida universities, 2 public, 2 private. We went to our economic development organizations and the Marine Industries Association, which is a trade association of marine businesses, and it owns the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show, which is the largest in-water boat show in the world. So after several legal departments, we were able to get that MOU signed. The 4 universities are University of Miami, Florida International University, Noaa Southeastern University, and Florida Atlantic University. The economic development organizations are the Miami-Dade Beacon Council, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, and the Business Development Board of Palm Beach County. And so the idea would be that the universities would collaborate on some of their marine research programs and projects, so that they're not all going after the same money to research the same thing and put it on a shelf. And the economic development organizations would help them understand the opportunities for commercializing that research. And so we have, since that signing of that MOU, we've become a 501c3 incorporated in the state of Florida, and have a very high level board of directors that is hoping to move the Marine Research Hub forward.
Awesome. Yeah, they've it's funny, when we were just starting Seaworthy, I was like, we had so much work to do to connect all these potentially disjointed efforts, and then I learned about the Marine Research Hub, and I was like, so glad someone thought of this beforehand, because it is it is such an important thing to encourage this sense of collaboration in our field.
And then when we partnered with the OceanExchange, we felt like we really were kind of creating this pipeline of academic research, economic development, and startup funding, which should be replicable around the country.
Absolutely. And I think it's a perfect way to get to focus on our part of the country, specifically in South Florida. So my first question for you, and I know some folks here are local, some aren't, but it's important to know, South Florida is obviously a major marine hub, and it's for I think people here, especially looking to get involved in it. First question I have for you is just, what does the blue economy currently look like in South Florida?
Well, that's kind of a good news, bad news scenario. The bad news is we don't really know the extent of the blue economy in South Florida or in the state of Florida, mostly because there's been a historic lack of leadership and coordination. And efforts are almost entirely singular and disparate. But the good news is there is enormous opportunity to fill the void, define the void, and ensure Florida is not left behind. And I think that organizations like the Marine Research Hub, in partnership with OceanExchange and now Seaworthy Collective, we're laying the groundwork to build that ecosystem of support.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was literally typing to one of my board members. I said, sounds like a pretty good opportunity to me. So it really is, though. And I think especially when you talk about not only culturally how embedded the oceans is in our daily lives here, but more importantly, us being kind of ground zero for climate change and ocean acidification and warming and impact on reefs. I mean, we have both the greatest opportunity and most to lose here. So it's a real kind of pressure, but in a good way. And so with that being said, what kind of emerging trends do you see happening for the blue economy in South Florida, or potential trends that you see moving forward?
Well, there are a lot of very cool things happening in our Marine Research Hub universities, from the life sciences discoveries like killing pancreatic cancer cells with I can't say this word, lidermatolide found in deep water sponges, mimicking the pattern of shark skin on scalpels and catheters to virtually eliminate staph infections and MRSA because bacteria doesn't stick to shark skin, to predicting the arrival of sargassum mats and predictive modeling for hurricanes. But some of the emerging trends I see are tidal energy, which is not reliant on the sun shining or the wind blowing. And there's a spinoff from Florida Atlantic University called Ocean-Based Perpetual Energy that recently demonstrated 3 types of turbines that can harness energy from the Gulf Stream for 24 continuous hours. So that's really a great test that was accomplished, and something that can really harness that energy. Efforts to combat blue-green algae, either scientifically, like the University of Florida's chemical targets for inhibiting microbial growth, presumably without causing any additional damage, or through policy and oversight that directs Lake Okeechobee discharges. And that also includes some safe remediation technologies that remove toxins and clean the water. Innovations that support sustainability and carbon neutrality, so there's carbon neutrality, measuring what you release and offsetting it with a reduction in emissions or removal of carbon, like buying carbon credits, or net zero, removing as much as you produce, or carbon negative, removing more than you produce. And carbon removal technology aimed at helping companies meet their pledged goals, I think definitely have a path forward. Advancements like eConcrete, which was a applicant to OceanExchange, they offer environmentally sensitive solutions for urban and coastal infrastructure projects that address resiliency issues through this concrete material for structures like seawalls and tidal pools that actually strengthen underwater. And then, of course, aquaculture and cellular generation of seafood, I think, is as we try to make sure that we have enough food to feed the globe, that those are going to be emerging trends as well.
No shortage of opportunities there, honestly. I mean,
There's
I
a
knew
lot.
some of those, but wow. And it's really exciting because I think, especially for me coming back to South Florida after many years, I realized how much already just the startup scene and innovation scene has grown here. And then, to merge that with the ocean space, which I think has kind of previously been somewhat disconnected, it's a real opportunity. And so far, it's just been you guys, and we're happy to join the fray. Last question I have specifically for you, and then I have one for both you and Millie. What are some resources specific to South Florida for helping those involved with the local blue economy?
Well, the Marine Research Hub and OceanExchange together, certainly. Seaworthy Collection, the Florida Ocean Alliance is another organization that more recently, through our involvement, has identified the blue economy as an opportunity for the state of Florida, and in valuing what businesses are currently here and what we can attract. But incubators and accelerators that foster collaboration, like Florida Atlantic University's Tech Runway or Nova Southeastern University's Innovation Center that will open next summer, I think that those are really important. And efforts continue to secure local and state public funding to help with branding, talent attraction, and administration to identify and inventory blue tech clusters and to build that community.
I swear I keep learning new things. The Nova one, totally new to me. That's awesome. I really, and I think the number one goal that I have for this presentation for everyone here, especially who's local, is, we now highlighted the opportunities, we've highlighted resources. Like, these are things at your disposal, and we're trying to, leverage our collaborations with these great organizations to make sure that they're available to you so you can get involved in this, right? I mean, that's the end goal, is that more than anything, innovation and entrepreneurship is what's going to be, contributing to the development of these solutions. And these resources can't exist unless there are businesses and initiatives to use them. So, we need your ideas. We need people motivated and excited to get involved in this space. And speaking of which, the last question I have, and this is for both you and Millie, is
Okay.
What advice would you give to current or aspiring entrepreneurs looking to get involved in the blue economy?
Well, look to successful entrepreneurs and solicit their mentorship. Understand academia is often antithetical to entrepreneurship. So partner the business-minded with the Marine Research Departments to find that inspiration and opportunity. And the last thing is identify the need and create the solution. Don't create the innovation and then look for someone who might need it or want it.
I like the last one. Millie, you want to respond to it?
Okay, so I had a conversation with Rodrigo yesterday, so this is going to be a repetition, Rodrigo, so hold your ears. Work in the ocean is very, 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 very difficult. And there are people that tell me that it's more difficult than air and aerospace. And I've seen many, many solutions that might be very good ideas to begin with, but they failed because they missed the mark in how they would actually operate in the ocean for those things in the blue. And an awful lot of them are things that are physically in the ocean, right? Not everything, but an awful lot of it is. And I think that people that don't grow up as a marine engineer or a marine architect or an oceanographer, I think that they way underestimate the difficulty of doing things in the ocean. And so what I said to Rodrigo yesterday in his works, figure out all the options and fail very quickly on the ones that aren't going to work, because a lot that are on the side of the road today in the ditch, they literally just ran out of money and time, you know, especially if it's a hardware oriented solution. It takes so much time and money to do hardware solutions anyway, and then you put the complexity of the ocean environment, and so many just, they never make it for that reason. And so don't underestimate the complexity of doing work in the ocean. That is my advice.
And honestly, to add to that too, I think part of the complexity is also the expense. It's expensive to rent boats for the day, and you know, have just the ability to even get out there to test your products. That's half the battle, is just overcoming the startup costs.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, but you know, on the flip side, the opportunity too is that, you know, you build these resources that make the oceans more accessible and give people access to resources, boats, you know, collaboration with universities that are already going out there. You know, I'm imagining some sort of timeshare Uber for boats one day where people can, you know, sign up for boat time and share it, so they're not all, you know, incurring all the costs themselves. But
It exists.
It does? There we go. See?
Yes.
Yes. I was like, invest now.
The state of Florida has a vessel that is housed over in Tampa that any university or organization can use for research. The Hogarth. It's called the Hogarth.
The Hogarth. Yeah, and I know Dr. Hogarth. He's a
right?
cool guy too.
Yeah.
And I would also, you know, they're private individuals, very high net worth individuals that have big boats that allow their boats to be used for research purposes. And there's a cruise line that goes to the Galapagos, forgotten which boat and which ship it is, but they have, I think, University of Miami equipment on it. So yes, some of that exists, Daniel.
I mean, I'm learning new things every day with you guys. Well, with that being said, so I have a section I'll present on Seaworthy, but before I do, did anyone have any additional questions they want to ask for Kelly or for Millie? Anthony, you want to unmute, or you want me to read it for you? I'll read it for you. So Anthony asks, in terms of our oceans and the security health of the blue economy as a whole, is there a most significant issue or greatest threat that needs to be prioritized first?
Well, for me, I think it's climate change, which is a big umbrella. But when you think about Florida being the peninsula that it is, I think climate change is really our biggest and most dangerous threat right now.
So I'll hit this from a different angle. I was on the Noaa Blue Economy Subcommittee this year, and there was not a conversation we had that didn't come back to data. And so the issue of either the lack of data, or it's all out there and not integrated, or it hasn't been turned into information, data.
Jonathan, were you going to ask a question? I see you're unmuted.
Yeah, if there's time for one more. I mean,
yeah.
I concur with the data. I sort of talk about that all the time. I mean, I just wanted to Hey, thank you both for presenting today. It's exciting, and I don't want to, spoil what I'm going to talk about next week, but I am so incredibly excited to be here with this group to share in some excitement. Most of you might know, or some at least, that yesterday was announced the Ocean-Based Climate Solutions Act, which is really the evolution of the Blue New Deal, which was E. Warren, and the Ocean Climate Action Plan, which came out of Middlebury. And it's huge. There's a lot of policy in there. It's 350 pages long, 360 somewhere in there. But buried deep in it and barely mentioned in the press release, they talk about the creation of ARPA-O. So if you know what ARPA-E is, as in like the Department of Energy department to give out SBIR grants for the ocean, this is a huge acknowledgement and recognition for the ocean space. And the fact they're acknowledging climate as the top priority is amazing. So that's just to share in the excitement and announce it. But I wanted to see if either of the two of you have been following that, or if you have opinions about it. And if not, join next week and learn more.
So our Blue Economy Subcommittee recommended to Noaa an ARPA-O, as well as some other funding mechanisms. If you look at Canada, Atlantic Canada has a series of super clusters, and one is ocean related. And because most of the work in Canada is in the Atlantic provinces, that's where a lot of this activity is. Federal Canada put together a 250 million Canadian dollar fund that's half federal money and half private money to support startups. So our committee studied that Canadian model, and we also made some recommendations about that. So I follow this very closely and am really quite excited about it. We don't know exactly where all this is going to go. ARPA-E has been around, 10 or 15 years for those of you that don't know of it. It's in the DOE. And they have inside of ARPA-E a Mariner project, which is about algae and algae to energy. So it also has had some ocean focus, although not an entire ocean focus, but ARPA-O would be just about the ocean only.
Doesn't that kind of go hand in hand with this new philosophy of some of the grants that are available to Millie, the federal grants that are available for sort of building the community, the blue economy community that have never been available before either?
So I'll do a commercial about that and something related. The DOE and the EDA, which is the Economic Development Authority under the Department of Commerce, and Noaa is under the Department of Commerce as well, if you didn't know that. They put out a grant or a proposal to give grants this year, and those have been selected in certain hubs in the United States. And as Kelly says, it's really a big shift in that it's supporting the parties that support the ecosystem, not the startups itself. Historically, and OceanExchange has looked at many of these over the years, and we never qualified for anything because we are part of the ecosystem. We're not a startup. So that has been going on, and they've had a couple of these. But now Noaa and the DOE has the Powering the Blue Economy Award, and they just opened up the Ocean Observation Award this week. And if you're not familiar with it, some of you may be able to form teams that could compete for this. But it's an integration of AUVs, harvesting wave power, and hurricane monitoring. And that's very specifically what that piece of that is for. And this is under the big umbrella of the American Made project. So if you just Google Powering the Blue Economy and American Made, I think all this would come up. I'm a contractor. I'm part of a group that's a contractor of the DOE, and we're recruiting people for this right now. So I also have some information, and if you want to reach me through Daniel, I'm happy to share that. But there's a lot going on in the U.S. And Jonathan, I think you're bringing up ARPA-O is if that happens, oh my goodness, we'll be so happy and lucky, won't we?
Love it. Oh man. Well, that brings us to we have about 15 minutes left, so I want to make sure we cover our end of things and hopefully tie it all together. But great questions, guys. And as Millie said, we're happy to connect you if you have more questions afterward. I'm going to share my screen and kind of go over Seaworthy side of this and give you guys some updates. I think Kelly, would you mind muting yourself? I got you. There you go. All right. So, so this is just a little tie-in on kind of, now you've heard from the big picture to the South Florida scale, and now Seaworthy's own side to the blue economy. So this is straight off our website. It's basically just our about us statement that we strive to be this hub for startups and aspiring startups with products and services that impact the oceans, and as we've touched on and we'll touch on more next week, really empowering this regenerative blue economy for South Florida and beyond. And when you start thinking about solutions that you can start creating in the space, and a lot of what we've already touched on today, there's different opportunities from ocean science, technology, conservation, sustainability, bringing policy. There's no end to it. And I honestly, more than anything, love to emphasize, especially as an engineer, the interdisciplinary aspect of it, and that you don't have to be an ocean science person to be in the ocean space. And in fact, we need more diverse members of our economy to be able to innovate and be more inclusive, and not be purely one focus and one trick pony. So for our community, and as we've touched on, and what we're excited about, is this real opportunity to lead the development of these new ideas and solutions for the blue economy overall, not just in South Florida. And it really does start with us. I think half the battle of being able to pursue an idea is being in the community that empowers you to do it and says and sees your potential and gives you the resources to do so. And that's the community we're building, is saying we have great resources from OceanExchange to the Marine Resource Hub at our disposal, and they're obviously happy to help us and inform you with great information. And now it's up to you to say, well, I have now all this opportunities. I'd love to even total up the dollar amounts of potential opportunities that we just went over. But the bottom line is, if it's not us, who's going to do it, right? And I have a whole rant that I've done, and actually I was just on a podcast actually about this, kind of identifying some of the issues with the current infrastructure, outside of OceanExchange, that there isn't much facilitating or enough facilitating solutions for the blue economy, specifically addressing a lot of these most urgent needs that we touched on today. So bottom line, the blue economy needs your ideas. It's an opportunity, and really more importantly, a path that a lot of people in the traditional marine science world don't necessarily consider initially, but it really is a great and growing opportunity, and we want to get more people involved in it, both from commercializing research to innovating their own ideas and coming up with new ways that we can really make a meaningful, tangible impact that also can make money. And that is really a new way of thinking for a lot of reasons, and we want to empower that. So reach out to us, reach out to Millie, Kelly. We're happy to connect you guys, and let's start building. And now just to kind of go over, some really exciting information on where we're at. So this, I'm actually going to have, Ben's going to post some links for us as I go through this here. So Seaworthy Collective, we officially are a 501c3 fiscally sponsored by the Abundant Earth Foundation. Hannah's here from Abundant Earth. Thank you, Hannah. We're really excited to be working with you. And as a result, we actually just secured our first grant-funded property, which are 2 remotely operated vehicles pictured here on the right, the Trident ROVs. They are coming our way, and we're really excited to put those to work. We have a little science project being led by Ben on the side, but we're going to be sharing those assets to be able to introduce people to technology, get them get people introduced to marine robotics. That's, personally something I'm really excited about. Additionally, something else really exciting is we are currently in the running for a 20,000 euro prize through Boot, and it's called the Ocean Tribute Award. We've posted it on our social media. Ben's posting it in the chat. Please vote for us. We need every vote we can get. And furthermore, we just launched our Slack group, and we want to find ways to keep people, interacting more than just coming to these events or getting our newsletters. And, we're accessible to you. All of our team is already on the chat. Ben's posting a link to that as well. And finally, we have a survey for after the event. We want to make sure you're getting the most out of these, and we'll be raffling off some Seaworthy stickers too. And looking ahead, well, first off, before I look ahead, I want to give a quick big thank you to Millie and Kelly. You guys have been great, supplying so much information. I know I learned a lot today. And, it's just, a real tribute to the fact that on the larger scale and on the South Florida scale, there's a lot happening in this space. And, the more people we make aware and the more people we empower to do something in this space, the more chances we have to make a real difference for the oceans. And now more than ever, we need that. So thank you guys again. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you to the Seaworthy team. And looking ahead, we have Jonathan, who's been with us today, along with my good friend Shailen Jyotishi, next week taking a deeper dive into the regenerative blue economy and what that really looks like. And we also have a Q&A with our leadership team next Friday, and I'll be happy to field questions that you guys have for Seaworthy. And that's the event for next week. So feel free to make sure to go to the Seaworthy events site and follow us on social media and all that good stuff. I'll stick around, see if there's any other questions. But otherwise, that's all we have for you guys. So thank you guys so much for coming today. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did. Yeah, if you have any last questions, feel free to type it in the chat, and then I'll let you unmute if you'd like. But otherwise, we'll stick around for a minute or two. And thanks for coming.
Thank you to all.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
I copied your link, Jonathan. All good. Thanks all.